Hi, One Best Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. This is our daily MLB pitching preview show that we do with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Right now, we're going to look at the pitching assignments for Friday, April 24th. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me back for many years, Mr. Loshak.
All right, Joe. How is baseball going at OffshoreInsiders.com? Because you always pick underdogs. Can I assume that if there's a couple days where the favorites start to win, that you probably didn't do so well at your side? Is that how it works with you?
Well, we do not always pick underdogs. Okay. I would say that if the favorites win, go on 100%, there's a decent chance that we had a bad day. But how often has that happened this year? Not often. 76 and 63 overall. 65 underdog winners. More underdog winners than losers combined this year, Peter.
That's great. Well, I had a huge, big favorite loser with Detroit and David Price starting. What do you think about that, Joe Duffy?
Well, there are times to pick a big favorite, but it's not something that we do very often, losing big favorites. That's for sure.
Tell me it was a stupid-ass pick. That's what you're thinking right now, Joe, right?
Yeah, occasionally I have some clients who are experts in 20/20 hindsight, so I'm not going to go there.
All right.
I'll tell you, if I tell you it's a stupid pick beforehand, that's one thing. Afterwards, right. I can always be a genius afterwards.
All right, let's start with Friday the 24th. First thing I want to talk about, right? I've been mentioning it in previous shows. I've been a little bit down on Matt Garza, and that has paid dividends. He's going to be starting at home against St. Louis, and St. Louis, can't have a productive lineup. Milwaukee's been the worst team in baseball in terms of ROI. I'm thinking Garza gets hit again, possibly crushed. What do you think?
Milwaukee has been quite terrible, but I will say this, and I looked it up earlier today, that teams with a winning percentage of below 200, I should say, and when you're getting the game 15 or later, they've been surprisingly a pretty good play. So, yeah, they have been the worst units won as we file this, but that doesn't necessarily, the statistics say they could regress to the mean. But in the case of Matt Garza, Garza's not been a very good pitcher over the last year plus. So he's pretty much a guy to fade. I know that he said that he rediscovered his slider and they had some high hopes for him in spring training, but that really hasn't been the case. So Garza would be a pretty good guy to fade. And the truth is, despite the statistic that I gave you, that fading Milwaukee has been a tremendous play. So it's they've been the worst team in Major League Baseball.
And then we got Felix Hernandez. Now, Felix Hernandez absolutely humming at home against Minnesota. Not a very strong lineup at all. It's going to be a huge favorite line for Felix, but how much of a lock is a great start by Felix Hernandez here?
Seattle's offense has certainly gotten better than a few years ago when they were an almost auto fade, at least among sharps, because Hernandez would be laying such a large number, and they wouldn't really score that many runs for him. I have to admit, over the years, I've probably gone against Hernandez more than I've gone with him, but not as much recently because Seattle at least has a little bit more of an offense. But it's one of those cases that as far as the pitching mismatch, it's clearly in Seattle's favor. But will it be worth the high price? I'm not so sure. But, you might bet it because if you bet David Price at a high price, why not go with Felix Hernandez?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, maybe the bet won't be on Felix because obviously this is going to be probably in the minus 200s. But I don't know, maybe Minnesota team total under, which would probably be something like 3 minus 130 or something like that. What about that? I'm asking how much of a lot. Yeah. Is there any way that you can see Felix Hernandez giving up, like 4 runs in 7 innings? I guess it's possible, right, Joe?
Well, of course it's possible. It's not like Hernandez has you had great starts every time he's going out there, but this is a good situation for him. Minnesota, it's not as if they have tremendous starting, and I'm looking it up as we speak that it looks like that not too many guys on Minnesota have done all that well against him. Torrey Hunter, though, in 45 at-bats does have a 3.11 batting average, and Escobar's done pretty well against him, although actually just one hit in the 3 at-bats, and Dozier's done fairly well. So, although maybe in pure numbers the Minnesota hitters haven't done tremendously against Hernandez, when you look at him, for the big number he's going to be laying, Minnesota's actually done relatively well relative to the rest of the league because they do have some guys who have lifetime batting averages against him in the upper 2s or lower 3s, but admittedly in a couple cases we're talking about guys that have gone 1 for 3 against him. So, you might want to look at it. Minnesota hitters have actually done okay against him.
And then we've got 3 different games with big pitching matchups, all 3 games with pitchers who are doing really well to start the year. I want to ask you about all 3 of those games and which pitchers we think you think are likely to maintain or which might be vulnerable to a bad start here. First of all, we have Keuchel against Kazmir in Houston and Oakland, right? Both those guys have been, excellent to start the season. Kazmir, how long can he maintain it? He does have a history of breaking down of injury at times, but is that likely to happen in this start? I don't know. Both those guys having great starts to the year, no doubt. What's your take on that matchup, Joe?
It was Scott Kazmir. He's been a darn good pitcher for a long time. When we do look at those lifetime batting averages, I do see that a couple guys with double-digit at-bats are actually hitting over 400 against him. So, he doesn't necessarily match up extremely well against the Houston hitters. And, Dallas Keuchel, he's been kind of quietly one of the top pitchers in the major leagues. Going back to last year, he's had 10 straight quality starts, a 4.1 ERA, 2.04 in that span. So he's been as good as anybody. Obviously, we're going to have a very low total here. It's going to be a pitcher's duel. But when you consider that, the Houston does have a couple hitters that have done all right against Kazmir, maybe they might be the better value here.
And then in Mets and Yankees, DeGrom and Pineda, two awesome starters, right? Pineda also a little bit like Kazmir, might run into some injury issues at some point, but before that happens, he's looking, pretty with lights out capability at any given night, and definitely looking excellent overall. And DeGrom, awesome live, young arm, pitching very well. Another game, probably a low total. Do you expect, awesome starts in both these guys again, or do you think one of these guys is more likely than the other to maybe be a little shakier in this game?
Yeah, and DeGrom, he's been unhittable. 0.93 ERA in 3 starts. You got to wonder that the Mets have been perhaps the biggest surprise of the early season so far. Can they maintain it? Pineda is a very good pitcher, but he's actually got an ERA of 5 this year. So if anything, you might want to go with the hot arm and the hot bats of the New York Mets.
And then Greinke and Cashner, and that's going to be in San Diego. So, big pitcher's park, and Greinke and Cashner both pitching well. Any reason to expect that maybe a first half under won't be a good play here, even though it's going to be a low total for this game?
I would say no. Greinke, he also has a strikeouts to walk ratio of 14-2, so he doesn't have deceptive stats. A lot of people look at just the ERA, and I still think, with all the advanced statistics, when you do compare ERA to WHIP, I really believe that they're probably two of the better ones, but people looking at the walks to strikeouts ratio, it looks like Greinke, clearly his numbers are pure. He has pitched extremely well. He has not been fortunate, and yeah, with those two, I really think that it should be a very low-scoring game, as doesn't look like too many Dodger hitters have done well against Cashner, so probably will be a low-scoring game.
That's all I wanted to ask about for Friday. Is there anything else we didn't get to that you want to mention before we move on?
Well, the Phillies, we know they have no bats, but Aaron Harang, a veteran, the crafty veteran, as they like to say, he's pitched pretty well. He's got an ERA of 1.96 in 18 and a third innings pitched, so there might be a few people who would lean towards the under there.
No, he's going to regress at some point, big time,
well,
right?
He is, yeah. No, he is, but we're talking short term. When we're talking about fantasy baseball, or whether we're talking about, the real Major League Baseball, when you're evaluating their long-term stuff, that's one thing, but
sure,
we're talking short term here when it's betting. We're talking about the specific situation. Look, Harang, he's been around a long time. It's not like he's a stiff pitcher.
Sure.
He's had some good years. So Harang has pitched well before. He's not a bad pitcher at all, and the Phillies aren't going to give him much run support. So the under might be a good play.
Right, so he's kind of one of those A.J. Burnett, Tim Hudson types who, even as he gets older and doesn't become a knuckleballer, still just kind of knows how to pitch. Is what you're saying?
No, that is true. That is true. He's a veteran that's going to be around a long time until, as he just can't overcome. He's a guy who's been able to make adjustments. Dennis Martinez was one of those guys a couple years ago that stands out, but Harang is a guy, when he loses a little bit off of his fastball, he's been able to make adjustments.
Dennis Martinez, Joe, who the fuck is that? Joe, keep it in the 21st century, all right? Keep it in the 21st century. Our viewers are like 24 years old. They don't know who the fuck I don't know who Dennis Martinez is. 21st century, all right, Joe?
But he was the guy that jumped out as somebody who used to throw a great fastball, lost a bunch. So he was really, truly the poster child. I'm not saying that Harang could ever throw as hard as Dennis Martinez could, but Martinez lost like 8. Yeah, all right.
I'm just saying, we don't need references from like 1975, all right? We need reference from like 2006. All right, Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. But that's why he makes these references, because he's been doing this successfully for 30 years. Guy knows how to handicap baseball, right, Joe?
I won during most of Dennis Martinez's career. So, yeah, I've been winning for a long, long, long time.
All right. Sounds good, Joe. Thanks.